Hi, and welcome to Book Salve, and this book 6 in my 100 Great Reads series. At the moment, the As I Read series, where I'm reading the book Children of the Dead by Alfreda Jelinek, is proving difficult because the book is so deep and relentless in what it's putting over. That those videos are tough, tough going, and I don't think they'll attract much attention, and they are really, to a large extent, for me to look back in the future at what I was feeling about a particular book when I look back at it. These videos are far more accessible, far easier to do. You do a little bit of research. I put myself together a script for them, and so they're a bit of light relief, really, from thinking about what I'm going to say about Jelinek's really tough book. Anyway, here we go. Book 6 is perhaps a more conventional novel by an author who's known for crossing genres into crime novels. And it's the debut novel of Kate Atkinson, Behind the Scenes at the Museum, which was written in 1995 and gained quickly critical acclaim. And it won the Whitbread Book of the Year award for that in that same year. So it made quite a bit of a splash for her as a new author. It's a saga of a Yorkshire family spanning the years from a day just before the end of the 19th century through to all the memorable events of the main protagonist, Ruby, who's the main narrator. She was born in the story in 1951, while her father, George, it's reported, was in the Dog and Hare in Doncaster, telling a woman in an emerald dress and a teacup that he wasn't married. So there we go. And though the story incorporates various family members' viewpoints, much of the narratives are filtered through Ruby's childlike innocence and curiosity, which gives a nice contrast between that and the mature themes and creates a sort of intimate, homely feel to the novel. Kate Atkinson, it balances the tone well, and I believe it doesn't fall into neither the trap of being too bleak when she's talking about dark subjects, or too slushily sentimental. I guess the novel was pretty much the first family saga that I persevered with and ultimately enjoyed a lot, and that's consequently why it stayed in my memory and become a book that I've enjoyed having read or throughout the years. I read it decades and decades ago. An opposite quote from the novel is this: families are complicated things, full of silences and things left unsaid, like a museum with lots of dusty corners and half-forgotten exhibits. And the museum that's alluded to in the title is York Castle Museum in York, the city in England. And this museum, the real museum, serves as a symbolic background for the novel, representing the way the family history is displayed, preserved, and partially hidden, like the exhibits in a museum. And as the story suggests, the novel's title suggests, that we're looking behind the public polished exhibits, those visible family stories, to uncover the private, messy, and often painful realities beneath the surface. So, while it's not literally set inside a museum, unsurprisingly. Um, the idea of a museum functions as a powerful metaphor for memory, for history, and for the act of uncovering family secrets. Um, Here's an extract. The museum was more than just a building full of dusty relics. It was a metaphor for the Lennox family itself. Each exhibit a fragment of memory, a snapshot of love or loss frozen in time. But museums, Ruby knew, were places of silence, of things that were seen but not spoken about. Behind every display case, behind every photograph or worn object, there were stories untold. Some were too painful, others too shameful and simply forgotten, buried under layers of everyday life. Ruby felt like an archaeologist, piecing together fragments of a puzzle that would never quite fit together, but that somehow made sense in a jumble. And I think that's one of the things about museums and art galleries that are so appealing. You can fix on one particular piece that attracts your attention, and there's a whole history behind how it was made, or where it was used, or what it was for, or its symbolic meaning. There's a whole story behind just that object, and I think it's always a nice thing to in those wonderful places that are museums and art museums, to find one piece that really grabs your attention and makes you feel as though you want to find out all about that particular object. There are always far too many in a museum. You can't take on everything you've got. And I think it's a mistake to just whiz through looking at everything. You look at everything in a very facile, easy way and pass over it and forget about it. Yes, you want to see everything that the museum's got to offer because you're there for the day or something, and you want to cover everything that it's got and not miss anything. But you're missing an awful lot if you just do all the lot. I remember going to a Rothko exhibition in Paris, and the thing with the Rothkos is that you do need to just look at them and get absorbed by them over an extended period. Just walking through, looking at, I don't know how many of his pieces were on display. I don't know, more than 100, I guess. I don't know. Must have been about that kind of number. If you just looked at each one for 5 seconds, you're kind of not getting what Rothko's doing, or what each painting is actually showing, or actually has on offer for you if you're prepared to take the time. You need to take the time on a piece, and I think you need to do that when you visit a museum. Anyway, back to the book, in Behind the Scenes at a Museum, Atkinson draws from her own experiences growing up in York. The novel's setting and depiction of family dynamics reflect aspects of her own life. And for instance, the protagonist, Ruby Lennox's experiences and observations of family life echo Atkinson's own childhood experiences. And additionally, Atkinson's father was an autodidact who valued education, which is mirrored in the character of Ruby's father in the novel. And this is a much different book to the one we did before, London Fields. There's no savage, satirical, caustic tone, but rather a soothing, tender and compassionate one that nevertheless doesn't hold back on the darker secrets of the Lennox family life. The characters are drawn as real people rather than hyper-exaggerated day-glow versions of themselves. And this makes Behind the Scenes at a Museum a quieter, more reflective book. Atkinson's York feels like a museum preserving history, family and memory, with warmth and depth beneath its surface, while Amos's London just feels like a dystopian stage for human despair, moral ambiguity and impending catastrophe. It's an entirely different thing. I have to mention that I do eschew Kate Atkinson's Jackson Brodie crime genre novels, which I fully admit marks me out as an utter reading snob. I've no doubt that the quality of her writing is maintained in those popular genre novels in the way that elevates them above the usual standard of formulaic thrillers. She's still a great writer in those, but the reality is I'm not interested in reading them. This novel is rather prosaically earnest, I suppose. There's no literary fireworks that might suddenly cause surprise. There are no jump scares that jolt one into close attention if one's been a little too lulled by the gentle ebb and flow. Anyway, one last extract as an exemplar of the tone. The past is never dead. It's not even past. Ruby thought this as she walked through the house, each room echoing with memories both bright and dark. The laughter of children long grown, the whispered arguments behind closed doors, the moments of tenderness that flickered like candlelight in the gloom. History was not something neat and distant, preserved in glass cases or dusty books. It was alive, tangled up in the fabric of everyday life, shaping who they were, who they might become. And as Ruby stood there, listening to the ghosts of her family's stories, she understood that, to know where she was going, she had to look closely behind the scenes. It's a really nice passage, I think. The novel's far less risky than some of Kate Atkinson's later novels, such as Life After Life, which is much more experimental, ambitious meditation on fate and time through a speculative narrative which focused tightly on Ursula exploring her interior life across multiple iterations. It's a different beast. And though this is not a flashy novel packed with literary surprises, I definitely say that Behind the Scenes is the right book for the right mood. And I shall leave it at that. So it's cheerio from Booksolve and happy reading to you all. Bye bye.